Hi everyone, just wanted to speak a little bit about week three, some of our content from week two, and a little bit about week three and what you have upcoming. Last week, week two, we spoke a bit more about the uses of data in organizations. We talked about, um, you know, things like use of data for quality improvement, looking at the term big data, which is really, when we think about big data, you're kind of thinking of all of the data that's available in the healthcare organization, but using that as in aggregate to try and make some decision making, do some decision making. The one thing that we didn't really talk about, and I don't recall if we get to it again in this class, so I'll mention it now. So there's a large project underway, research project that's called All of Us. I think it's called something like that. I think that's it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, I could probably just search it here real quick while I'm talking. Um, all of us, yeah. So it's a project that is through the NIH, and I may have mentioned this in this class. I'm teaching two classes that are kind of running some of the same topics at the same time, so I don't remember if I mentioned it to you guys um, or the other class. But so the All of Us program is it's a research study where they're looking to gather data from at least 1 million people in this country, and it's really to drive precision medicine. Precision medicine is one of the outcomes, one of the great outcomes of the kind of the data revolution in healthcare. In that they can take our data and so let's say 20 years ago we would go to the doctor and maybe we were having trouble losing some weight, we had some blood pressure issues, maybe some cholesterol issues. 20 years ago, you'd be treated in a certain way, and everyone was treated in that way. Like, okay, let's try this medicine, let's try this medicine, okay, decrease your calorie count, increase your exercise. This isn't much different today, but what we're looking at now is the ability to take data from over time and take our genomic data, our genetic information, and figure out, well, what works best for this person. So it's not 3 years of trial and error before you can get your blood pressure under control, or it's not multiple years of trial and error to try and figure out what works best. Our genetic data is what drives, our genes are what drive how we react to things physiologically. So these types of programs are taking that genomic data, but then also our social determinants in our life. What are our lifestyle differences? What's our environment? Do you live in an area? I know here in Western Pennsylvania there are lots of like the steel plants and the coke plants and those kinds of things that really cause health issues for the people that live near them and work in them. So those types of things. And then the focus is they're going to take this big data, which truly will be big data, and crunch it to figure out, okay, well, so maybe a person that has this genetic trait is going to be this medication is going to be more impactful for them, and that's the precision medicine initiative. You yourself can join this study. I know that I'm actually sitting in my husband's office at Duquesne right now, and Duquesne offers. I'm pretty sure they have an arm of the study going on, as does Pitt. So you can get involved through either of those mechanisms. And probably lots of others in whatever area you might be in. So if you are interested, come check it out. I think it's fairly non-invasive. They just take they take some blood, do some interview work, and then it's just tracking data from there. So it's not you have to take any medications or do anything like that. But a great way to contribute to our better use of big data in this country from a healthcare perspective. So I think that was about it. We talked about the garbage in, garbage out, and how one of the things that's really interesting about this notion of garbage in, garbage out is that um, we have all of this old data which maybe wasn't good, didn't have a lot of integrity, that we're dumping into these brand new electronic health record systems. So by dumping that garbage data in, bad results are coming out. So it's really important that we are very cognizant of what information we put into our electronic health records, as well as other data-related projects. Um, One of the things that I think about from a electronic health record standpoint are the ability of, I still do a lot of compliance consulting, and the ability of providers to cut and paste information from one record to another. So a lot of provider organizations will shut that capability off because of the data integrity issues it creates. But so let's say I'm just buzzing along, finishing up my paperwork for the day at the end of a long day of seeing patients, and I know that I asked every patient the same questions about review of systems. I've already dealt with their pertinent positive results in the history of present illness, so I just copy and paste and plug that into all of the other visits I've done that day. Well, what if by mistake I chose one that specifically had made reference to a problem that patient had that perhaps the other patients didn't have, or made reference to female reproductive system organs that men don't have, and you're copying and pasting it on everybody else's. So there are lots of problems related to that notion of copy paste, and that's garbage in. So when you're putting garbage in, ultimately when people are crunching that data on the back end to do research, to look at it for quality improvement, all of those types of things, you're going to get garbage back out. So it's not, a lot of people blame technology for things, and goodness knows I blame technology for a lot of things, but most of the time when there's a technological issue, it's user error, either by me or by, in the case of something I'm dealing with, it might be a user error by me, or it might be, let's say, for example, we've been having some issues with Blackboard. I'm sure likely have noticed that you can't see your week 1 papers. I was unable to grade them in the format that it's in Blackboard, which I've used for ever, but something went awry apparently with the last upgrade to Blackboard, and those functions don't work anymore. So I had to convert everything over to a Turnitin document and deal with it that way. But so in that case, it wasn't user error, but it was an error on behalf of the folks that load that stuff into our Blackboard system, or an error on behalf of Blackboard itself. So sometimes there are errors. Don't always blame yourself if there's a problem with technology, because sometimes there are other outside issues, but it's the computers aren't the ones making the problems. It's the humans that are trying to work them. So let's talk a little bit about week 3. So sorry about that. I'm doing a bunch of videos at one time. So in week 3, we're actually going to start talking a little bit about the tools that we can use to crunch some of this data. And you'll see, and I think it's next week. Next week we're going to actually do some data crunching using SQL, and so it won't be super in-depth, but that's why we think it's very important that you have some background in the healthcare or in the IT world before you come to this class. So hopefully you're ready to go with those hands-on data crunching exercises next week. But for right now, what we're looking at are when we are taking data and we're using that in the healthcare setting, we're typically using statistical tests. Now, we're not going to, if you reach the point where you're going to graduate school, you'll learn all about all kinds of statistical tests that you can run, and great programs like SPSS that'll help you run those tests. We're keeping it very basic and using Excel in this class. So if it's something that you've used before, and hopefully you have in math classes or in other classes along the way, you've used Excel, and we're going to be able to do some calculations of things like median, mode, mean, standard deviation, those types of things in Excel. And so in your readings and resources section, there are some videos. And then there are some, so I have kind of this video, which is to give you an idea of how to do those types of calculations. It's very automated in Excel. You just need to know how to make it work. But then also, if you're not very familiar with measures of central tendency, which is what mean, median, and mode are, you may wish to watch this additional content on that. If between those two you're still not getting it, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to work with you, work you through that content. But don't let it spook you. It's not. It's very basic, really kind of basic algebra that likely you've done. I know you've done it in high school, and you've probably done it in college if you've taken a class a math class, which most of you have. So we do have a discussion this week because we are talking not just about tools like statistical tools, but also tools like how can you represent visually how these different types of things exist. So, for example, measures of central tendency are often are often visualized in a chart, in a bell curve chart. So, depending on how the data is distributed, it's going to vary, but oftentimes you'll see bell curve type charts where this is the minimum, this is the maximum of the scale, and then the number of whatever you have goes along that, and with that you can usually mark the median, the mode, the standard deviation away from the center, etc. So that those types of charts, as well as histograms, bar charts, scatter plots, which is oftentimes where we'll build our bell curve out of. But so lots of different options, and there is a nice article about that in the readings as well. So you're going to be talking about choose some kind of a hypothetical situation that you want to analyze, and then share which type of representation visually would be most appropriate for that. So that's our discussion for this week. And then I want you all to be kind of analyzing each other's thoughts. So if I say, hey, I really want to analyze the number of visits to the walk-in clinic, and I say, well, I'm going to do that with a bar chart, and somebody else says, well, no, I think a scatter plot might be better because you'll be able to tell all different things from that. Feel free to share on each other's thoughts. You also have a written assignment this week, which is really just a worksheet. It's this worksheet. You can download and fill it in, or you can print it out and handwrite it and scan it. I don't care how it comes back, as long as it comes back to me with the questions answered on it. So this is your written assignment for this week, and then you'll upload that just like you would any other written assignment in the classroom. So that's all I've got for you. Like I said, if you're not comfortable with the calculations and you need some assistance, please feel free to reach out. We'll have, I'll meet up with you in the classroom. We can talk on the phone. You can stop by my office during office hours. Any of those would be fine. So that's all I've got. Any questions, please just let me know. Thanks.